another Zoom call at home and said she would be late. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Ah, they're back. All right, now we've got two Laurens.
Weird.
We're back down to one. So, has everybody got a copy of my draft minutes from the 30th?
Yes.
Did I miss any favorite points that should have been in there? That if so, please just make a note, hand it back to me at the end if you get a chance to look them over, and I will make the necessary corrections. So,
Hey, Jack. I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up, but I just noticed the 8th grade boys comment, and just a reminder that my husband teaches 8th grade at the middle school, and he did have them do a project
excellent.
related sort of to the master plan, and so he is working on compiling their survey responses. So they drafted their own survey for their age group,
Good.
collected the responses, and so we should have those for the next meeting if we
news.
want to put that on the agenda in some way.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'd love participation, particularly at that age. 8th grade, I actually can remember 8th grade barely.
It will be interesting to see the responses of their
Yeah,
survey.
yeah. Well, I know they want a bowling alley.
Well, it's not a bad idea.
Who's paying for it? One of those things. Okay, Jim.
Yes.
We're in communication. That's good. That's a big step in the right direction. Opening agenda review. 5 minutes.
All right. Hold on just a moment.
Can anybody hear me?
We kind of.
This computer. Hello, Jack. There we go.
Who's that, Rosie?
Yeah, Rose.
Yes, I just wanted to remind you, did you take attendance already?
I didn't get any of that.
Did
no.
you take
So
attendance?
did you take
Attendance.
attendance?
Attendance, yes. Excellent. Okay, beginning with Marnie.
Marnie Crouch, present.
Emil Dahlquist present. Dave Wanger here.
Jack Lawrence here.
Kristen Piper present.
Caroline Beaulieu, present.
And on the screen, Rosie,
Rosie Kennedy, present.
Lauren.
Lauren Lynch, present.
Okay. All accounted for.
Shall we rock and roll, Jack?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. All right. So agenda reviews. So up on the screen, you have basically what we had in the agenda that Patrick sent around, a little bit abbreviated. But so we have the opening and agenda review for 5 minutes, the project status report, which will be about another 5 minutes, the homework chapters in Google Doc. So that's the transportation and cultural and historic chapters that you took a look at and gave me comments on. I'll go over the comments I received, and I'll show you in track changes the updates that we made. Then update on the public engagement process. So I know there are a few things that are going on there. So we have 15 minutes for that. Confirming the next meeting date and agenda. We already have one item, which is the survey that the graders put together. And then we'll go through other committee business, and that should close us out for the evening. So theoretically, we are done by about 7:30.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Come on, you're not supposed to laugh that heartily already, Jack.
I like it. Okay, so we're into the first part of this thing. We're now into transportation.
That's right. So yeah, so we're going to go over transportation and cultural resources, but first a quick status update. So some recent updates, and I will send this status report around with the meeting summary when we do it at the end. But sort of main points that come out of this. So we received comments on cultural and historic resources, as well as transportation. And those draft sections have been updated. As you know, there are several other sections posted up online on the Google Drive. So please go ahead and comment on those when you can. We've received a bunch of comments already, which is great. Looking forward to any more that we might receive. Public survey has been drafted by the town and issued, and then a redrafting of the survey is in process. So we had that original survey from back a couple of months ago, and a redrafting is in process from what I understand. I think we'll be going over that a little bit later on this evening. Action planning for land use and community facilities and services was completed by the MPC. That was at previous meetings. So we have those. Next time around, I'd like to try and take a crack at a few more of these action plans and start to get those updated and then populated into the documents that we've been working on. So I will start doing that. And then once we have those drafts together, Patrick, I'll run them by you. If they look good to you, then we can post them, and those will serve as updates for those sections, just like we have for transportation and cultural resources, although neither of those two have the action plan in them yet, because we hadn't done those yet. Hoping to do those next meeting. And then we're working on the integrated water and wastewater management plan. That's in process. That is nearly complete. We should be receiving that soon. Then I will send it to Patrick for his review, and after his blessing, again, post it like the other sections. So that'll be available for review too.
Jim, pardon me.
Along the way, we'll do a PowerPoint presentation of that section as well.
Jim, if I might, with respect to water, are you familiar with what is going on at the state level with respect, and in the town level, with respect to the studies that were completed or should have been completed at the end of June, which I understand are now being written up with respect to the water supply for Hamilton? And as you may or may not know, I'm assuming you do know that Dewberry, on Hamilton's account, has been doing their study of water needs in Hamilton, and Bruce Tarr's task force has been doing the supply side of that business. I spoke to Wayne Castonguay, who the Ipswich River Watershed Association, who has been working with Dewberry on our part of this thing, and he expects their report to be completed next week. What they have concluded is that the ideal plan, which has been presented and hopefully will be implemented, involves a rebuild of the Beverly-Salem Water Board plant with state assistance in Beverly, and that that will allow, given their three reservoirs, Longham, Centerville, and Wenham Lake, that would give them sufficient water to supply Hamilton. The plan being to run a pipe down at an approximate cost of $6 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but it will alleviate our water supply for the foreseeable future, and will relieve us from the having to build a couple new reservoirs for approximately $10 million. So that we will see what the plan actually spells out. The alternative with respect to Salem is Salem would tentatively go onto the Water Resources, WRMA, supply the current point there, the pipe WMRA is on both sides of Salem and Marblehead and Reading, North Reading. And that hopefully will provide ultimately to the system, as it would be rebuilt, rejigged, re-engineered, sufficient supply so that that would provide our reserve to the extent that we ever needed a reserve beyond the reservoirs of the Beverly-Salem Water Board. The other factor would be that Hamilton, being the first to receive that supply from the new plant, and all these things obviously are if the plant gets built and so forth, which is going to cost something north of $50 million. Their present plan apparently is marginal operating. And we would become the hub to supply the 5 towns downstream, which are currently also running out of water. I don't know if anybody's looked at the Ipswich River of late, but it's becoming a low tide beach very, very rapidly. And so this is all long overdue. The only thing that could possibly derail all this scheme is a political intrusion of local interests, and hopefully that doesn't happen. The alternative to the hook into the WMRA is WRMA, anyway, is
MWRA.
is that they would have to build another reservoir up on Route 1 above the Centerville Reservoir. That would be a whole lot more expensive than a $6 million pipe coming into Hamilton through Wenham. So in your draft of water, wastewater, I don't know to what extent you want to be able to, I would hope you'd want to be able to incorporate that and provide whatever boost that might give with respect to implementing this plan, should that be determined to be the best way to go from the engineering standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that we have the Dewberry report and
You have it,
that we've
okay.
been looking at that. The extent to, the extent to which all this information has been incorporated, I don't know exactly yet, because I have yet to see a draft of that plan, but I do imagine it'll be in there, Jack. But definitely appreciate that.
Well, as you know, most of the towns down, the small towns downstream have had water restrictions in the summer for a long time. We still dry up the river. It is effectively disappears as an environmental and a recreational resource. It's not good for it. It's not good for us. And it's not good for any future development possibilities in Hamilton, some of which might be quite water consumptive. So this is a very, very important measure that's under consideration at the present time.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. The $6 million, while not too many people have $6 million structure. That's not very much money. That's pretty inexpensive.
Well, everything costs, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they're saying the Egypt River, which feeds into the Ipswich down in Ipswich, it's gone dry already. I'm told that it doesn't make any difference if the river goes dry as far as the supply is concerned, because there's a lot of water under the Ipswich that probably would take us through the summer. But seeing a dry river watercourse is not something that should happen. It's bad on every basis. So
It's not real good for biodiversity, right?
among other things.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so you're on top of that. That's great.
Jack, may I just ask a question about the third bullet down? When you say action planning for those topics was completed, have we completed those?
Well, so we did that as I'm using the term action planning, referring to the meetings that we had over the last, I'd say about the last 2 months, where we went through the action plans, got your input on them, and the MPC's input on them, and so we have that information and can incorporate it into the ideas that were put out there as draft before, and then incorporate that into the sections, those respective sections of the plan too. So they can go into land use and they can go into community facilities and services
So,
and
if I
become
may,
part
just
of the
one more.
draft.
So Jim,
Yeah.
I have diligently attempted to get you to react to a June 6 email that I sent you regarding the services and facilities and the action plan.
Right.
And I've not, so that was June 6, and I've asked Patrick and I've asked you to react to that. I don't know if you intend to do so at some point, along with other suggestions by other members of the committee.
Yeah, definitely. We plan to incorporate that into, as I was mentioning, into the draft chapters. So those existing conditions chapters, we've gotten some comments on those already. I expect we'll probably get some more because I think we had partial responses from the members. I shouldn't say partial responses. I should say we had responses from some of the members, but not all of the members.
So I'm sorry, I just didn't understand the phrase, "these things have been completed."
Yeah,
Is anyone
I meant
else?
the workshop action planning, so to speak.
So it
So
was
The
when,
meetings where we reviewed them.
yeah, there was the document that had like the goals at the top and then things to keep in mind. That's
Yes.
just the exercise that we went through during the meeting. So the exercise has been completed.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but I am interested in having the committee look at my suggestions and see if there's any consensus as to any of them, and I'm sure other members likewise have suggestions as to the action plan. So I look forward to when that is going to be done.
Yeah?
We also have
So-
Emil's submission to talk about tonight too, which might change some structure. I think it's very nicely thought out and I think needs to be given a good discussion and perhaps an implementation. It's I don't know, Jim, you got Emil's table of contents and draft plan framework.
Yeah, I did receive those.
Okay, that's on the agenda, a little further down, and I think we've collected a lot of information, but from the structural and content standpoint, I think those are very important to go over and implement to the extent that everybody feels it's important to do so. Okay.
All right. So keep moving on, right?
So transportation.
Yep. So this is just a reminder of how you access the stuff on the Google Drive, and reminder of some of the kind of comments that we've seen so far, and then let's get into the transportation section. So, and then we received a couple more comments tonight that I haven't, incorporated yet. Lauren was going through them and had some comments as well. So I'll include those too. But so far, we had a change in the word. I think it was dominant before or something like that. It should have been predominant. So, or no, I'm sorry, it was a misspelling of predominant. It had an E in it instead of an A. So, so that got updated. There was the terminology down here, and this got changed outside of well, before I had turned on track changes. So it's just got the words influx in here. I I don't know, I got some additional comments about this as a follow-up that maybe influx in. I think people are commenting on it sounding like a little bit redundant. So we'll come up with some terminology here that, that works and makes sense for this. We had a comment to add the Woodbury Street along with Essex Street, because Route 22, I guess, turns from Essex Street into Woodbury. There were no comments on this page.
I thought there were some redundancies there, Jim, and I do apologize that I didn't get track changes on those to you. Marnie did a great job on this. I just thought there was some language that could be deleted. In the first paragraph, just for an example, it said the rail line that runs through the center of town and throughout its downtown area. I thought and throughout its downtown area wasn't instructive. Center of town is effective, but I thought we might delete the words and throughout its downtown area. There's a second place where that occurs as well.
Jack, you mentioned the first paragraph. Did you mean in the
9.2,
introduction?
sorry, in 9.2,
9.2,
first
okay.
page.
In this paragraph that I just highlighted? I'm just-
Next
Yes.
to last line.
It's the
The
next to
last
last
one.
line, next to last line. Before the MBTA, Hamilton, Wenham, it says center of town and throughout its downtown area. It conjures
okay.
a vision of the train looping around Willow Street and various other places, which I thought was not instructive.
So say again how you wanted to change this, Jack, because I was busy looking for
Where
it.
it says, third from the bottom of the first paragraph, commuter rail line that runs through the center of town, period.
Yeah.
And delete, and throughout its downtown area.
Okay, there we go. Like that, right?
Yeah.
I had an addition to this as well, Jim. We should be including somewhere here that the Cape Ann Transportation Authority does provide some bus service for elders. That's headquartered out of the Council on Aging building.
Would that be appropriate in this introductory section, Patrick, or was there another spot in the chapter?
You probably want to get into better detail later in the chapter, but you probably ought to say, or at least mention it in the introduction, that limited bus service is available through the Cape Ann Transportation Authority.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? Are we supposed to be sort of doing this editing right now during the meeting, or is this something that we should be doing outside of the meeting?
We can, I
Yeah.
don't know, Jim, is this helpful? Because otherwise I'd be happy to do this with track changes. There's a few other areas that I thought were a bit wordy, excessively wordy, and I'd be happy to do that as a track change exercise rather instead. I'm just sort
Yeah.
of giving the upper one as a kind of as an example of the kind of thing that I think we can streamline this a little bit and then maybe simplify.
Yeah, Jack, I agree with you. I had a couple of editorial changes, but on a broader level, I found that the table numbering is not sequential, so I found that to be confusing and frankly irritating. So I couldn't understand why the tables are numbered the way they are, and they don't necessarily correspond with the chapters. So at some point, someone has to go through and proofread this document so that the subsections and the maps and charts that go with it have more integrity. So if you're in a chapter, so chapter 9.3.3, bridges, has table 9.4. That doesn't make too much sense to me because it's really the second table, not the fourth. So
Yep.
that's an issue. And then I had also some issues with the maps.
Yeah, the map is, it's got a lot of people's driveways as roads.
So on figure, I think it's figure 1, which, to be consistent, should probably be figure 9.1. I note that. But the map with the traffic volumes had more area that was in Wenham than what was in Hamilton. So you're referencing connections to Route 1, but the map doesn't show Asbury Street even connecting with Topsfield Road. And then in another section, you talked about bridge volume. That was in table, what is now denominated table 9.4. And you have the volume of traffic on the bridges. So I don't know why you wouldn't have incorporated the volume of traffic on the bridges in figure 9.2 for traffic volumes. But of course, some of the bridges are not on that map. So those are those comments. Then going to the MBTA map, again, I know your source was the MBTA. Well, commuter rail, I rode the commuter rail from Boston to Hamilton for more years than I'd like to count. And the way this is structured, it almost looks like there's a T-stop, a commuter rail stop in Peabody, when in fact that stop is in Swampscott. So if you're going to denominate the various stops, I would list all of them. And when you look at this map, it almost appears that there's a commuter rail stop in Peabody, when in fact it's in Swampscott, and then some of the other stops aren't even listed, like North Beverly and Hamilton. Goes from Beverly to Ipswich. So I make those comments. I would make that map more detailed. Oh, and then there was, this is another inconsistency, though, that should be addressed. So on table, what you have denominated table 9.9-2, it talks about the number of people who walk to work, and you're listing that as 5.3%, but over on page 8, the third line down, you indicate that less than 0.2% of residents walk or bike to work. So which is it?
So let's see, let me make sure that I'm getting this correctly. So walking, commuting to work data shows 5.3% of the population here. And you were pointing out another table, I guess, or
No,
was
not a
it?
table, it's in the text. It's
In
on
the
page
text.
8, the third line down, it says, according to the US Census, less than 0.2% of residents walk or bike to work.
Could you tell me where that is again, Rosie?
It's Marnie, and it's page 8,
Oh,
Page eight.
sorry, Marnie.
page 8, the third line down. It's the second, it's the beginning of the second full sentence.
This is Lauren. I just want to echo Kristen's comment. I think this is all really useful feedback, but I'm just wondering, like, in the future. So I, for example, earlier went through the doc in Google Docs, and I think these types of comments can definitely be added as comments on the side. And then, like, it saves Jim a lot of time from searching through for the page number. And then we could also, it could maybe be more effective. Jim could kind of provide responses in writing to each of the comments that we provide, and we're all able to see each other's comments rather than kind of watching each other make the comments in real time, is just my thought.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that, that I'm not missing comments that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think maybe it could be helpful if everybody like, because I think these are really important comments, but if we all make them ahead of the meeting maybe, and then we can use this time better to just,
Lauren, I don't mean to interrupt, but I thought that's what we already did. I thought everyone who had comments had already made these comments, and this was to be the final version of existing conditions. But
right.
I have no problem making my edits in track changes. I think, for me, that's easier than trying to use the matrix.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think that's way easier, the track changes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that too. The matrix was being used because it was requested by you folks, so that's why we started using that. But I prefer the track changes too. It's just easier to find the comments and see them.
Yeah. With respect to the maps, that we can't really use track changes to address comments with respect to the maps.
Right. You can just, I mean, what I've actually done in the Google Doc was just add like exactly, Marnie, what you were kind of articulating, just wrote out my verbal comments on issues with the maps. Cause I agree. I mean, you can't really like draw on the map, but you could just write it on the side.
Yeah, you can, so I did that in a couple of places, just as an example, this one, where you can click on the map and add a comment in if you have one.
I do like the track changes. Jim, there's, are you set, Marnie, or I don't want to interrupt? On page 5, you note that the Cutler Bridge over the railroad, which was built brand spanking new in 2004 out of pre-stressed concrete, is considered to be only fair condition. Which, if you compare with the Highland Street Bridge over the Ipswich River right below it, which was repaired in 2009, has a big divot in the middle of it, and was originally built in, I think, in 1842 or something like that, also characterized as fair. I don't think the two compare as fair for that particular grade. I would have said that the new one over the Cutler Road, on Cutler Road over the railroad bridge, should be good or excellent.
So this sort of presents, that's Jack, right?
Yes, Jack, yeah.
Yeah. This presents sort of an interesting issue because the source of our data, I believe, was all this report, the National Bridge Inventory. I
figured you must have a good source. It just, knowing the bridge, and I watched it get built way back in 2004, and they did a nice job.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of thinking about this, whether if we think that the data is like faulty data, whether we should take the information about the condition out because it doesn't correspond to empirical observations, like namely what you just explained, and if maybe we should take the condition out and say as a recommendation that the town either coordinate with the bridge owners, might be the state, or conduct an assessment of the bridges to get an up-to-date assessment of them, because we don't want to. This source of information should be a good source of information, but if it's providing poor information, then we shouldn't include it, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm mindful, Matt, you remember last year, late summer, the air quality of Hamilton was considered only to be fair because there was all this smoke in the air. And I said, that's not our prevalent condition. That smoke's coming from forest fires in the Pacific Northwest. We shouldn't be characterized as having only fair air quality in Hamilton, Massachusetts. And so, I mean, these things shouldn't get enshrined in a permanent form in this document.
So let's take the condition assessment out of there because it doesn't sound like that's useful data. Does that make sense?
That probably makes sense. Unless the bridge gets condemned, people are going to use it anyway, so I don't think they're going to refer to this before they cross a given bridge.
So to echo what Kristen and Lauren said, it's the process is that we put these notes before the meeting into it, and then you guys go through it on your end. So is there what are we supposed to be doing right now? I think is what I'm asked. Like, is this an agenda item for us to go through this point by point and listen to comments, or is this just an update? I'm trying to understand the process and how we can be the most efficient with the process.
Right. So this is essentially to provide an update. I know there is an interest in posting these things on the website, the master plan website, which is up but has not been optimized yet because we didn't have significant enough information to put up there yet to really for it to really make sense to be optimized. So the idea was to get some of this information up there and then be able to more properly launch the website. So the idea was to go through these chapters, confirm that they were in good enough shape to be posted, which I'm hearing that there are some comments that need to be addressed. And then, given that those comments need to be address those comments and then get things posted. I don't know if, as the master plan committee, whether you guys want to go through these one more time at another meeting to confirm that they're ready to go, or whether you just want us to clean them up and get things posted.
Yeah, so it sounds like from what Marnie said that there was some confusion about what the definition of done was and what is final for review versus still taking feedback. So I guess my question is, what is the date that we're trying to post it, and when is the last day that feedback should be received, and what is the timeline in which your full comments will be incorporated so that folks know that they're looking at the final version? Because I think maybe just the process of to Marnie's point, she thought this was about to be posted, and if that was the case, there are more comments. But if you're saying actually everybody needs to review this and gets comments in by Wednesday of next week, at which point a final version will be distributed for review, and then any last minute comments can come in the next meeting before it's posted. I think it would be helpful to just have those benchmarks, because I think it's excruciating to go through edits line by line in a large group in a room. And so if we could just maybe milestone this and then go from there.
That is certainly fine with me. So as the committee that is overseeing this, providing guidance on it and reviewing the documents, do you guys want to do that? You want to get me comments by midway through next week so that we can update these and get final versions posted? So at this point, there's these two documents that we're going over tonight, which are the transportation, the cultural and historic resources. And then there are 3 other documents as well that have been posted up on the website for review. They've been up there for a while, and I've gotten some review comments, but not a whole lot, not from everybody in the group. And we'd set deadlines in the past. Some people responded to them, but not everybody.
Yeah, I empathize there. I think that's on us, and I think we need to, as a cultural norm, say if your feedback isn't in by the deadline, you agree to let that thing go, and we can do a better job on our end of saying that was the deadline, as long as we're clear with what those deadlines are, because I think otherwise this could drag on forever and ever. So to start, when do we want this posted to the website?
Well, not yet. Clearly, there are still edits to be made. So I think I agree that we need to have another pass at it. And then after our next meeting. We will, at our next meeting, perhaps we should have all our comments in, and we will have reviewed everything. Jim, you will have edited our comments and sent it back to us for review, so that by the next meeting, we will have everything completed and able to vote this in.
So what about the first week of August? We aim to have those 5 or however many you just said, Jim, finalized and posted to the website. So that means we need to get our comments in sometime next week to be incorporated. And then I would just add one more suggestion. So if our next meeting's on the 28th, instead of spending time on incorrect numbering and, you know, things like that, I feel like you should just have carte blanche to make those changes. But if there's substantive comments that we need to talk about, we spend the time on that during that meeting on the 28th, talking through those and agreeing to those. But anything that's just pretty straightforward or common sense, I feel like you should just accept and move on.
So the deal is that we'll have our comments in by midweek next week, and then Jim, when will you have sufficient time to review everything and then post the final edits or ostensible final edits by that Monday before our meeting? Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think so. So if we can say, that is it reasonable to say that I get comments by the 20th?
On these 2 chapters, right?
Yeah, we could do that.
And then you'll
Okay.
distribute a final version or mark a final version like 2 days before our next meeting, so that if folks want to go in and take a final look, does that work?
Say that again. I'm not sure I quite followed that.
Sorry, so if everybody gets their comments in by the 20th, would you be able to have something turned around and cleaned up by the 26th in case folks want to go in and see a quote final version before the distribution and review on the 28th?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we should set a deadline for all comments for the remainder of the chapters that are up on the website.
Right.
So if
Agreed.
members have not given you their comments, then we should set a deadline for everyone to have done that, because I believe I've given you comments on all the chapters, but I don't know if everyone else has. But we should.
I think you're the only one that's done that, Marnie.
Jim, you've got my track changes, I think, on the other 3. And
Yeah, I have several from you, Jack.
I did 3 of
I
them.
might be missing 1 or 2.
Yeah, I did 3 of them. These 2 I've got all marked up. I'm going to be gone next week on vacation. So tomorrow I'll do all my markups and send it all to you as track changes. And you'll have 5 out of me at that point. And I think that'll catch me up.
Okay.
Jim, what are the other 3 documents that you referenced?
Yeah, let me just pull it up real quick. I'll show you.
Thank you.
If I can get this to behave properly. Oh, okay, they are showing here. So we've been looking at transportation and cultural,
Yep.
and there are actually 4 others that are up there. They are services and facilities, natural resources, land use, and economic development.
And Jim, could I just clarify from a process point of view? Like, I know there are a few different ways we are all submitting comments, and I imagine that makes a lot more work on your end to compile. Like, if
Does
you're
indeed.
gonna
It gets
comment,
confusing.
yeah. And so I'm just wondering if there's a need for all of those different ways, like through the matrix, through people downloading the Word documents and submitting individual files to you with their own track changes versus using the Google Docs so that people can see each other's comments. I mean, I have a preference for Google Docs, but I know not everybody does, but it just seems like we could save a lot of time if we just pick one way and stick with it.
Yep, agreed. So that necessitates that we pick something that everybody is comfortable using. And I would throw out there that if people can just go in and download the files and then do their changes in track changes.
I agree,
Yeah,
Well,
because that allows for multiple comments, and then if they're redundant, then you can just filter through them.
Yep.
so as a Luddite in the group, I am not capable of doing that, notwithstanding Patrick and Jim's efforts to get me into a mode on my iPad. So I'm afraid I'm going to be the outlier in terms of the common approach.
I was gonna say, I think one outlier is better than, a million different versions. So if everyone else
Yeah.
can do track changes, I think that's probably okay. It's just one
I
outlier.
appreciate that leeway. And so Jim, if you could, or through Patrick, email those to me, I would appreciate it.
Would you then still, David, would you then still do your comments and track changes, or would you do them a different way?
My ability, I'm afraid, is limited to doing them by email to everybody.
Okay.
Perhaps what you could do is just, if you can get the hard copies, just edit the hard copies and just make sure you have a copy for yourself and send one to Jim. I mean, you could bring them to Patrick and he could scan your handwritten changes. So instead of trying to put all your changes in an email, you can just edit the document the way you would have like a brief when you were a lawyer and just scratch out something and add something. You just have to make sure it was legible. I don't know if that would be easier for you than.
I had a secretary.
David, I'll have the 5. I can send you over the 5, either in hard copy or bring over the 5 in hard copy, and you can make your pen changes. We'll throw them into the track, or we'll go the other route, and you can, well, you don't want to do your own track changes, but you can read them over and see if there's anything else you want to change, or if I can either send them to you, or I can hard copy them to you.
I don't mean to take the time of the committee here, whatever is,
We'll work it out.
okay.
So Jack and David, you'll work out a method.
Yeah.
And you'll just get the stuff to me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If you read what I've
So,
done and like it,
um,
maybe that'll take care of it.
What?
If you read what I've done and like it, then maybe that'll take care of it.
I'm sure I'll.
If you don't, we'll do something else.
I just want to make a quick comment, Jim, on the draft of the transportation circulation. Circulation and transit. There's a paragraph that tells us that Figure 9.3 demonstrates the areas that a Hamilton resident could drive to in 30 minutes. And then it lists towns. And I'm raising this now because, Jack and I, to some extent, have said that the comparative universe used in the economic development section, including Lawrence, Lowell, and other large municipalities, those are in opposite to Hamilton. And this is a statement in this chapter that suggests that smaller towns are more appropriate for use. They're used here as an example. I'm suggesting they be used in the economic development chapter also.
Yeah, there's been a lot of back and forth on that issue. The issue with redoing that economic analysis or the housing analysis or those sorts of things is that the analyses were already done. They were done, using the best professional judgment of the people that wrote them up. We could redo them, but a few things. We don't think it'll show you new information that's really going to be helpful. That's, in our experience. And 2, that will take a significant amount of additional consulting time. And so we would have to work out changing our scope of work for that.
I'd have to say, I agree with you, Jim. I'm not sure I'm not sure we really need that.
But you were the proponent of it before.
Yeah, but I don't think it's gonna make, I didn't like the method used, but I'm not sure it's instructive.
That's fine. Whatever, if the committee is of a consensus that this is an irrelevancy, then I will be guided by that.
Well, I'm just one opinion. I mean, if anybody else says,
I know this has been a sticking point for a number of folks on the committee. I also know that our scope didn't incorporate that focus that you were looking for. That having been the case, I've been spending a fair amount of time in actually looking at a number of smaller comparable, what I consider to be size and area comparable communities, and looking at some of the factors that they and we have that are sort of alike that I think might be of interest to people. I can hand out the chart that I've been working on later. If people want to talk about it now, we can do it now.
well, I think that would be excellent timing but I think particularly with some of the new members on the board who didn't hear the original Eric Alverson presentation, I think it might be instructive if we did look this thing over and
I will say though,
well,
Eric,
I don't want to take everybody out of sequence, but.
well, and Eric did do that presentation twice already, right? And so we are potentially now talking about a third iteration. So I don't know. I'm a little torn about continuing to change things. I think we have to make a decision and stick to it, knowing that it may not be perfect, but nothing is.
The upshot of the information is that, and I think people wanted to know effectively, is there a magic bullet out there that Hamilton's not affording itself? Frankly, there's no such thing. There are communities like, say, Newburyport, like, say, Ipswich, that are kind of unicorns in and of themselves. Significant things happen in those communities, like in Newburyport, they've got an industrial park that really powers that community. They have a vibrant downtown, vibrant waterfront. They have a lot of tourist activity. A community like Ipswich has two major employers, Ebasco and New England Biolabs. Like I say, those are communities that are nearby that have a lot of similarities to us, but frankly, we're different than all of them. And
But that is the big
you look at some of
difference.
these others, like West Newbury, Boxford, Essex, Topsfield, Wenham, that's more like what we are.
Right.
And, these are communities that don't exert much of their focus on economic development. All of those communities have, generally speaking, a fairly significant amount of their property in Chapter 61 that is decreasing the revenues that come to those communities. So, they've made conscious decisions in time to reduce the amount of taxes they're providing their community. Whereas some of them, at the same time, they consider education as important as Hamilton does. And that's why they have a level of their budget that's going to education. So I think those are some important points that I've found in looking at these other communities, rather than going far afield. And, like I say, there are not magic bullets when it comes to making communities more economically solvent. The real focus needs to be if the community really wants to broaden its tax base, is to get more commercial property.
That I would say is the major difference between Hamilton and the other peer towns around us, is that Ipswich, Rowley, many of these places have frontage on Route 1. They have industrial places that do generate. Ipswich, of course, as you say, has two big industrial operations, if you want to call EBSCO industrial. That's the key difference that I think is floating their boat. That's just my opinion. And anybody can say you're wrong, Jack. But that is the big difference that I see between us and everybody else.
So-
And that's the silver bullet that I think we need
Well,
to
Jack,
somehow load.
I think you're 100% about Route 1, but also some of these other communities have water access, and so that's another big draw. I mean, Ipswich has Crane Beach and a lot of opportunities.
We'll have water access in another 50 years, Marnie.
Just, I won't live to see the benefit of it. But, you know, that's another difference, because that's a real draw, and
Yeah, we can't do anything about that, though.
Can't do
We
anything
can do
about it.
something about the industrial part of this
No,
thing.
my comment wasn't suggesting there's a magic bullet in any one grouping. I'm concerned, and again, remind us all that we're going to be signatories to this report, and I am just intellectually embarrassed when there's a chapter that uses significantly large cities as comparative measures for data regarding Hamilton. I don't think that's an approach with integrity, and I would be troubled by signing that kind of report.
Can't we have a disclaimer, or is there already a disclaimer, Jim? I can't recall, that explains why that is the choice based on, like you said, the professional opinion and experience of your colleagues. You know, have a footnote, an asterisk, or something that explains why larger cities that are not apples to apples comparison to Hamilton are used in this way. And perhaps then we can incorporate some of this data that Patrick has pulled together to say, you know, there's a table, you know, in the appendices or something that highlights towns that we would consider more similar to Hamilton, or, you know, something along those lines. Because there's a reason, Jim, why those cities were chosen. Correct? Yeah. So let's just maybe explain that, and then recognize that that's the way this process is done. It's not perfect, and maybe provide some of this insight as well.
But I think this is Rosie. Patrick, I think your research is excellent, and it certainly is very instructive for us to include that in our master plan, vis-a-vis the irrelevant cities like Lawrence. So my opinion is it's worth it to edit it to make that section meaningful. I think that's great analysis, Patrick, and research. So I would opt to just edit that enough to make it relevant to Hamilton's economic development.
Does it affect the modeling in some way? I'm just trying to understand the impact. I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good here. I also know that, having worked in data models a lot, like, a scaled model isn't necessarily wrong, it's just scaled. So someone might have, you know, 3x something, but if we're still a third, the data applies. So is there a way in which the data that we're currently using is incorrect scaling our models? Like, how is it being used?
Well, actually, I would say we can't really look this over. What I would suggest everybody do is focus in on that housing chapter. You've got the draft, and determine whether you think that it's incorrectly represents what we have here.
Yeah, Carolyn, I'm commenting on one of the 5 chapters.
Yep.
I forget which one now. Obviously, it's being used to present a comparative measure vis-a-vis Hamilton. And that's just wrong. It's just absolutely
Yeah, I think what
unfounded.
I'm trying to understand is like, to what end?
Well, so I can't recreate that for you at the moment, but please read that chapter and see.
Yep. I mean, I looked at them this morning.
Are we talking about the housing chapter?
Yeah.
Or the
That's
economic
not up
development.
on the
We're talking
website.
about
I didn't
economic
see it.
development.
Economic development, not housing.
Economic development.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're into the doctrine of materiality here is where we are. And,
Yeah.
and
You know, I'm not sure it's good material, you know, because Hamilton is Hamilton, and our economic development can only occur in certain areas. And that's it.
yeah.
Well, then why not strike the whole,
Well, that would be an
Section.
option.
Well, when we get down to Emil's table of contents and suggestions, maybe that's something we can peruse further. I would suggest, and maybe see what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we get back, though, to your excellent point about deadlines? And we did talk about the services and facilities, natural resources, land use, economic development. I think we should set a deadline where all the master plan steering committee members give Jim their comments by a certain date. And that's a date that can be the subject of discussion, since I've already given him mine. I'm not married to a particular date, but I think the sooner the better to get this process moving.
So the,
August 1st was the one that was mentioned. Is that,
July 20th, we said, but only for 2 chapters.
that's for the 2 chapters.
So-
and so if our
Right.
next meeting is 2 weeks after that, and you pull back the deadlines from there.
I think our next meeting is July 28th.
Right, so that's for those, so that's
That
our
is.
final deadline for approving those 2 chapters. So if our
And then
next,
there would be a subsequent meeting on the 11th.
yep, so if we're saying the 11th, we would then say by the 27th, 28th, Jim, you tell us, we would need, well, actually, you could probably, yeah, we would need final comments on the other 3 chapters. 4 chapters, there's 4?
Yep, there's 6 total.
Yes,
Okay.
there are 4.
So we're saying, yeah, so the 28th, which is the day of that other meeting, which is great, because we can remind everyone in the meeting that you have until the end of that day for any comments on the other 4 chapters, which then, Jim, you could turn those comments around by the 9th, right?
Yep.
And then we
And
I
have,
why don't we
I think-
say,
yeah,
why don't
I
we
think-
say, hold on just a second, why don't we say August 1st for the date that folks get me those comments? And
Okay.
then that way, if on the 28th, people haven't had a chance to make comments yet, they have the weekend.
okay. So August 1st is the deadline for comments on the remaining 4 chapters.
That even might be a little short. I would like to see that pushed out a few more days, because the reality is, to put concerted efforts into that takes time, and it might not be possible to get 4 chapters reviewed in just those few days. So I would like to see that pushed out.
So are the chapters not available currently?
No, they're available currently, Rosie, so you could do those all tomorrow. Or you know, we have like 1, 2, a little more than 2
If one
weeks.
didn't have anything else to do, yes, one could, but I think realistically, it's just not possible to look at these chapters, get these chapters in, and then have Jim's turnaround and then re-review those. So I'm just thinking realistically, if we want to do a good job, we need just a few more days. And so that would be my vote.
So why don't we, here's a slight turn on that recommendation. What if we get comments on the 1st or the 3 that were posted roughly in the April time frame? So that would be natural resources, land use, and the economic development one.
Well,
Or if you
again,
wanted to, you know, it could, maybe that's a little too much too. It could be just natural resources and land use. Those have been up there for a while.
Yeah, and I know for myself, I have reviewed those, and will do so again. But okay, so you're re-suggesting your revising the request, land use and natural resources by August 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well,
Rosie,
that's
I think,
certainly more reasonable in terms of my timeline.
and I think Rosie, to clarify, if you've already reviewed those, you don't have to review those again in this round. My understanding is we are talking about if you haven't reviewed any of these yet. These are your deadlines for your first initial review, and then Jim will provide an updated copy, and that's the version that you may want to take another look at because that's going to be the near final version. So whatever anyone has already looked at, you don't have to look at it again until we get Jim's version later in a couple of weeks.
Right. I'm just speaking generally from being disorganized to being very tightly organized. I think it's too much for people to do a reasonable job, 4 more chapters by August 1st. So it's not just for my benefit, but it's for the benefit of the entire group. I mean, people have other things that they're working on as well. So again, I will push back and say that maybe by August 5th might be more reasonable.
Let's, we just do our best, huh?
No.
No.
Nope.
By
nope.
that, to get everything
I
by
think
in.
by now, if they've been there since April, we're talking about May, June, July, August. Like, it will have been 4 months to review.
But I'm saying by August 1st, just,
Right, but I also want to,
I'm on your date.
yeah. Well, I'm kind of wondering, like, Rosie, to your point, then why don't we say our deadline is to have every chapter confirmed by our August 25th meeting.
Ooh.
That way we have 6 weeks from today. There's 6 chapters that have to be signed off. We're going to do this, and we're just going to say by September 1st, when the wind changes and the children go back to school, everything's signed off and done, and we move. Like, is that cleaner for everybody to just say we have 6 weeks to wrap this up?
Except Carolyn, Christian, you had said this is not going to be the final.
But so if we say, right, so if we tell Jim that by August 11th, which is 2 weeks before that final meeting, we will have all of our feedback in on all 6 chapters, so that's about a month from today. And then he's going to revise those over the next 10 days and then present finals to us before that 25th meeting and says, so on Tuesday the 23rd, he says, hey, y'all, all of those changes have been updated. We're going to sign off on these on the 25th. Like, would we be comfortable with that timeline? So then to your point, Rosie, like, you have 6 weeks and you schedule your own, or you have 1 month from today, you schedule your own time. And we just agree that by the 11th, nobody is making any more comments until Jim presents final to us.
Speak now or
Yeah,
forever
that
hold
sounds,
your peace.
that sounds great.
Okay.
But Jim, do you have time the week of August 15th to incorporate edits in 6 chapters?
I think I do.
Okay.
And by the way, I turned off my video because the bandwidth was bad. So I will be getting comments from folks by what date?
August
11th.
11th.
August 11th.
All 6 chapters. We agree as a group that we're going to review all 6 chapters. We're actually going to have little parties leading up to then. And then you will turn that around for us by, like, you know, Monday the 22nd or Tuesday the 23rd, whatever works best for you. We'd love you the most if you did it by the 19th, but no pressure.
Well, I was thinking I would try and get the 19th anyway.
Oh,
so,
great.
Yeah.
Well, under promise, over deliver.
Okay.
And
So
then
I'm
that
under,
way.
I'm under promising on the 23rd, but I'm going to shoot for the 19th.
Good. That way, before the 25th, when we have an agenda item to sign off on the final versions of the chapters, folks will have time the beginning of that week to go in and look at them, review them, make any final comments, and then we can plan an appropriate amount of time in that 25th meeting to go through and make sure everybody feels comfortable before signing in blood, Dave. It's going to be a blood thing. So you're not just a signatory. It's going to be blood.
All right, so do we have a structure?
Yes.
All right. Jim, I have one other comment which I think is hopefully important, and that is Manchester, I believe the legal name is Manchester by the Sea,
It is.
Yep.
which is, I think, a rather unfortunate name, but it does delineate it from, or is differentiated from the one up there in New Hampshire. And we probably should use their legal name, shouldn't we?
Yep, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Could I just make one more process comment or suggestion? And that is just during these next 6 weeks then that we have to review. I know I would prefer to get a weekly, very brief reminder and status update, I think from Jim. I would find that useful just because I know it's very easy for a 6-week out deadline to kind of appear far away. I also am, I'm motivated by peer pressure in that if I know, 6 other people have reviewed 4 of the chapters, I will feel behind if I have not been doing that. I'm not saying we have to put names of who's reviewed, but just, I think for Jim, it could be useful for you to obviously also see, nobody's reviewed 4 of the chapters. We're 2 weeks out. We have to kind of stay on top of ourselves that way. Just a thought.
Nobody gets impeached.
No, yeah, it's just personal kind of accountability, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, who owns sort of the management, if we were gonna send out an email reminder, is that Jim is our centralized person there?
Yeah, it's his people who have to incorporate it, and it's his people who have to finish off these chapters, too. All of them have pieces at the end that need to completion. And Jim has explained that it is Weston and Sampson that will complete those pieces at the end, not us necessarily.
But this is us holding
Yeah.
ourselves accountable as committee members, so I will offer to do what you just described, Lauren, if that's okay with everyone. I will send an email tonight when I get home outlining what we decided, and then I can do weekly reminders of what still needs to be reviewed. Maybe I could do 6 of 10 committee members have reviewed chapter 6. The remaining 4 of you get going. I could do something like that. I'm happy to do that.
Prizes?
There will not be prizes.
Oh, okay.
The nudge, the official nudge.
Maybe you'll get a shout out during a meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a very
Then do you
generous
want a
offer. I think
list
that'd be
of-
great.
Then do you want a list of who I've received comments from thus far?
If it's not obvious already in the chapters, that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's currently obvious.
Okay.
So.
If that's not too much work, Jim, that would be helpful.
Okay. So who was that just saying that?
Sorry,
that we're
Kristen
gonna do that?
Piper.
Was that Dana?
No,
No.
Kristen Piper.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Dana is not with us this evening, unfortunately.
I got some chapters to review. Now that you're gonna be.
Okay, so we better move on, because I do want to get to Emil's table of contents and comments.
All right,
So
so
we're-
I think that we should, because it's coming up on 8 pretty quick here, that we should just pull up Emil's thing. So I will do that, and then I'll reshare, because I have to go into my email to grab that.
Do you need a copy? Are we waiting for Jim, or we want to?
You have copies?
Yeah, I do.
If you have a handy email, then that would be helpful. You sent that last week, right?
There's two pieces, Jim.
Two pieces.
One is the plan framework draft, and the second is an annotated table of contents.
Right.
Oh, I have this.
The date is July 1, Jim.
Thank you.
Plan framework.
There we go. And it came to me from Patrick. That's why I was
Yeah.
having trouble locating it. All right. Which one do we want to look at first?
Look at the table of contents.
Okay.
This actually was introduced last fall, Jim, before you were on board. Caroline Wells was representing Weston and Sampson at the time. And then some of these items were developed and discussed briefly at that time period. But one of the things that's, I think, bothered a couple of us is that at this stage, we don't even have a table of contents about what we're working toward to maybe complete something. And we had introduced the idea of maybe combining these various elements that were part of the RFP, part of your response to the RFP, like community facilities, transportation, economic development, and tried to organize it into three basic categories: what to protect, what to provide, and how to grow, as overall categories that communicate to the people reading this really how this master plan is being organized. And then finally, taking action at the bottom, or looking ahead, whatever we want to call it, is going forward. It's implementation, next steps, appendix, of course, but and pending legislation and regulatory changes. So what we thought at the time was, if I can start at the top there, if you can just drop it down a little bit, introduction, that there might want to be an executive summary and current conditions and trends. I think you're working on the current conditions, and I was not sure how you were going to introduce that particular information into the master plan, and I thought maybe it could be a synopsis at this point, current conditions and trends as the intro, and then a public engagement. So just the intro would be an introduction of how this master plan is being put together and organized. So I thought that would be a good way to start that. And again, this might be your thinking already or not, but the idea was at this point to just get something on a table to be revised if necessary, but as a working document going forward. The what to protect would be the natural resources, open space, recreation. And my thought was to introduce the community character, which is really mostly land use and cultural historical resources. But rather than calling it that, I think from my standpoint as someone who's done some of this before, that's a good category to include because it is one that people understand what it is and they can follow it and it would draw their interest. So it's not introducing a new element, but what it is changing the name of it and combining some of the land use and the cultural historical resources. There is a land use down at the bottom there in taking action, land use plan. And as I think we had discussed before, this land use is one of the only topics in this that actually touches on every single one of the elements in the master plan. It touches on community facilities, transportation, economic development, residential development, all of them. In the end will be, have an impact on the land use plan because that's looking forward. And that's really where I think we're looking at recommendations mostly to inform planning board, whatever, to take some action in terms of making changes to what we have now as the bylaws. So what to protect, again, natural resources, open space, recreation, community character. Those are the three there. What to provide, community facilities and services, transportation. And then I included utility infrastructure, and I just put a note there. It's currently not programmed, but it might be, you might be discussing that under another element, parts of it. So the, and then finally how to grow with a sense of place or building places. And again, this to me is probably the key element in the entire plan because it really gives direction in where the town really wants to go. So in community character, you've identified what it is that people like about the town of Hamilton. And then with a sense of place, building places, and again, this to me is probably the key element in the entire plan because it really gives direction in where the town really wants to go. So in community character, you've identified what it is that people like about the town of Hamilton. And then with a sense of place, building places, and again, this to me is probably the key element in the entire plan because it really gives direction in where the town really wants to go. So in community character, you've identified what it is that people like about the town of Hamilton. you're going to describe how you're going to grow without destroying what you already have and you like. And so to me, they kind of work together. So the how to grow, again, is a sense of place, or we could call it building places or some other title, economic development, residential development. And then I put in sustainability and resiliency, which I think is a category that I noticed in the visioning session that we had back in November in your word cloud. That was one of the highest rated topics. When you showed the word cloud, it was brought up by more people than any other topic. So I just thought we might want to put that in there. And again, I think a lot of this material is already in your work, but it's buried. Or once you get beyond the existing condition stage in each one of these elements. So this is what had been introduced actually back in the fall, and I'm just bringing it up again because I think it's a good way, I think, to organize and be completely inclusive of everything, but it makes it more understandable, more approachable, accessible for people who want to read this. I think they can follow it. They can go right to the areas that they're concerned about, and they can find out that information, as opposed to, say, the 2004 master plan, which was really one chapter after another, after another, after another. It wasn't really organized in a succinct way that was easy to follow. It was a lot of good material, that's for sure, but it was not really, to me, that accessible for people to read. And then the taking action, again, the land use plan will be sort of the result of all of the information that's prepared in each of those protect, provide, grow categories. So now taking action would be, what changes are we going to propose to get to some of the recommendations that are being made? So each one of those elements, like economic development, for example, is where I think we would want to include a survey topic, and that survey would be in the latest survey go-round that we had. We decided to target some of these individual elements to address them specifically, to ask specific questions about each one of those elements. And I thought you could perhaps include maybe a sidebar, but it could be included in each one of those topics, so that when you look at that section, you have a sidebar with the results of the survey on the right or left, and then you have a description of what that economic development topic is, starting off with maybe an overview, and then you follow it up with information you've already prepared and existing conditions. And then toward the end, and there's a lot more to be filled in on economic development, but then toward the end, you could have the goals, policies, recommendations, which would follow, again, each one of the elements. Because I'm not sure where you were proposing to put all of that information that we've been working on. So this is just one thought I wanted to put on the table to see how best to organize this in I think kind of a reasonable, readable kind of organization. We can go to the next topic, which is the framework.
Just a moment. Open that already.
While we're waiting to just pull that up, I mean, we've been talking about this for like a year. You brought this up like a year ago. I love this structure. I think it makes working on the master plan more exciting, reading the master plan more exciting. No offense to the way master plans have been written in the past or are typically organized. I also think some of the comments and feedback that folks have given so far on everything that we've been reviewing is that there seems to be missing connections between information. And I think the way you've structured this and the way you just explained it sort of naturally creates those connections. There's a thread throughout the entire document. It's not just one separate chapter about this one thing and then you move on to this other topic, because it is all connected. And I think by organizing it this way, it makes that happen more naturally and not forced.
It overlays a hierarchy on everything, actually, and what happens is, again, I'm not picking on the 2004, but it's a body of material that you you need to tackle, but it's not completely evident whether it builds to whether it builds, climactically or anticlimactically and toward the end.
Yeah.
This seems to have a progression to it and an organization. And as you said, just makes it a little bit easier to follow. And
Like a story instead of just a manual.
I agree with everything you said, but more importantly, well, maybe not more importantly, but it's the questions that are going to draw people in so that they can find out what the answers are. And I really like the idea of having the table of contents and the framework based upon the questions that everybody has, but may not have articulated in this particular fashion. But it's a very logical sequence for presenting the information that we have now that seems to be disconnected, if you will. And the information that we have really has to lead to conclusions. And if the information isn't within a accessible structure, it won't lead to good conclusions. And
Jim, are you hearing all this?
I am.
Oh,
I
good,
am.
okay.
I think these
Sorry,
are great
Marty, I just-
comments. I
quite a
like
ways from the
the
microphone,
structure
which is worrying.
that Emil has laid out. I think this framework makes sense too. And what we've been doing with the existing conditions to date was really just pulling data together.
Right.
We pulled it together by topic area, and we figured we
Yeah.
would organize it later on. I'd heard a couple of different things previously about the organization and the framework, and one of them was that it had been decided and it was, pretty much set in stone. And then later on, I'd heard like, well, no, you sort of have a free hand with that. And I'm happy with the structure. I think this is good. So,
Well, then, Jim, why don't, or Jack, per Dana's comments at our last meeting, why don't we vote on this and adopt this as our official framework so that we're all on the same page about it?
Well, before you do that, Rosie, Jim, I just want to ask you, this was kind of set up using the information that's already been provided. So the idea was not to create more work for you in this, but just to organize it a little differently. So this,
appreciate it.
Right.
it doesn't really represent I don't think, a dramatic change except for community character. But again, that's mostly a name change, and I think that description can be tweaked a little bit to, I think that's gonna be the most informative one, and then how do we grow or with a sense of place is the next most important thing that we can work on, once those are drafted. So the idea was not to create more work or to change anything dramatically at this stage, which would cause a delay in time and effort and so forth. But just before we go any further, just revisit this and use this one so that we all have more of a better roadmap where we're headed.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we adopt Emil's
Hang
draft
on one second,
plan
Rosie.
framework
Marty
along with
wants-
his table of contents.
Wait a minute, Rosie, wait a minute. Marty had one other comment you wanted to make.
I had just a couple of comments on the taking action portion, so I don't know to what extent our motion would cast the table of contents in concrete. So I love the table of contents up to taking action, and then I just think I need a little clarification. So in my world, I might put pending legislation and regulatory changes as the first step.
Right.
And then the land use second, and then the implementation third, and I don't really see the difference between implementation and next steps, but if there is a difference, then what is it?
No, that was put in there as, I thought it might be useful for whether this committee in the end or Weston and Sampson might actually indicate who is to do what. It would be, in other words, I can see everything leading to recommendations for bylaw changes, for example. But then who takes action? Is it gonna be the town, the planning board? Is it, and I think, Jim, you and your, I guess it was the implementation plan that you had on the Google Docs, where we could actually fill in that information,
Yep.
what agencies should participate in this activity, and that was there. I didn't know whether that would be a separate, this is all a work in progress, Marnie, that these titles can change, so I see that whole,
I thought all this
Yeah.
was great. I just
Yeah.
didn't see the difference between implementation and next steps.
yeah, I was gonna listen to
So
what.
what I imagined when I saw them, because I had initially, Marnie, I had the same reaction, but then thinking about it a little, I figured implementation was probably that implementation table that Emma was just talking about.
Yeah.
And the next steps might be some discussion, such as, how the town tracks the actual implementation actions in that table,
Right.
and how things get moved forward. So it might be more of a narrative section.
Okay, great. I understand. So it's sequencing and that type of thing, and monitoring and.
So perhaps we can make the motion, Rosie, if you still want to make the motion, to just indicate that, like, we agree to this general framework, but
Right,
we're not
right.
stuck to the
Yeah.
words that are on this page.
Yeah,
guess,
I mean,
the exact
I
language.
think I utilized in the motion, the draft framework, so that certainly allows us to edit, as necessary. Is that all right?
I second your motion, Rosie,
Okay.
What is the motion
to approve the table of contents.
as
The
presented?
table of
subject
contents
to-
and the draft framework, meaning we can edit, as necessary, but that this will be our main, framework, and, with edits, it's a draft framework with
It'll be
edits.
our guideline, right?
There,
Yes,
well, we are adopting it, hopefully, as our guideline, our draft framework guideline, yes.
Okay, Jim, have you got all that in your record somewhere?
I think, yes, I think we have it recorded, so,
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further comment? All in favor, say aye.
I
Boys, you need a roll call vote.
You need a roll call vote.
Any opposed?
Jack, you need a roll call vote.
We'll do it. I'm just wondering whether we got any opposed. Okay, let's roll call it then. Roll from Marnie.
Marty Crouch, aye.
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Dave Wanger, aye.
Jack Lawrence, aye.
Kristen Piper, I.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye.
Is Lauren with us? Yes. Lauren,
Finch, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
it is unanimous. So declared.
Yeah.
Can I
Dana will be proud of us.
Jim, can I ask you a question? This is Kristen Piper. Just looking at the draft plan framework, is it too early to start to copy and paste what your team has put together into some of these sections to get an idea of the start of the flow of the document or where we need more work? I feel like it might be too early for that. But just looking at this, it looks like so much, but I know you guys have done so much. So I think I would find it helpful if I just saw, some of this information starting to be filled into this plan framework.
sure.
And you don't have
So
to answer
what I
that right
would-
away.
What I would recommend is that we wait until the end of August when we're ready to bless those sections,
Okay.
and then put it in.
See kind of where we're at. Okay. Thanks.
But Jim, you're going to use this as a guide now as you go along in your structure and editing, right? As this all comes in to end up with something that looks like this at that point, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would offer something that I think we'd be happy to do at this point, which is to take this and to put it into a sort of a graphic framework, so you can see roughly how the plan might lay out and what it'll look like, and that we can, we can include the table of contents as one of the pages in that. And we'll work in Microsoft Word for the text editing and everything, but then we'll put it together in a more graphical format. We'll probably work with InDesign to do that. I don't know how many of you folks might be familiar with it, but it's a publishing software that allows you to lay out things with, you know, a great deal more color and photos and graphics and things like that. Makes it look nice.
Emil?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's, to me, the more graphics, the more photographs you have in the master plan, the better it's going to be. So that sounds great.
Okay, cool. And we can, I think we could probably have that graphic framework ready for I'm going to under-promise and we'll see about over-delivering, but by the 25th of August. So when we're blessing this, we're also sort of blessing the layout structure.
Jim, yeah, lose the cannon.
Lose the cannon?
I don't think we need the cannon.
Right.
It's got to be genuine Hamilton stuff.
I'll let the artists know.
Okay, let's go on to the survey, if that's okay for everybody. Or does anybody want to discuss any of what we just did further, or everybody's happy? Okay, survey. I have a few comments. I think this is great. I have a few comments which I would like to put to discussion. I had nothing on the first page, second page, third page. I think I got down to transportation, item 3. Hamilton should seek ways to increase transit services beyond commuter rail for residents and businesses. I'm not sure what we're saying here. How would we seek to increase transit services? Are we going to try to bring in a bus line, or are we? I don't know what I would vote here.
To be honest, I'm not sure who made that recommendation.
All right, let's think about that one a minute.
Yeah.
Under utility structure, number 2, Hamilton should encourage improvements in internet speed and cell phone service. God, I think that would be wonderful. I don't know what we can do better than Fios, but the cell phone service stinks.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I mean, just to get the tower back here going might do something. I'm dubious, but I think it might. Down, how to grow. Hamilton should encourage commercial development in small clusters throughout the town. Are we talking shopping centers, strip malls? That kind of blows my mind, I guess, but maybe I got it all wrong.
Jack, I think the purpose of that question was to ask if people wanted small areas of commercial development, like little pods, and in different areas in town, instead of cramming everything, presuming growth in the downtown, which is pretty crammed as it is. So it was just a question to see, will people tolerate small bits of development in different parts of town, commercial development?
Yeah, this actually is what a lot of towns do. They call them nodes, that rather than sprawling out your downtown area linearly down an arterial road, they prefer neighborhood centers of some size. It can be very small, a little larger, as mixed-use development assets within the community. I did notice in one master plan in the past, Patrick, you may know it, but there was something proposed on School Street at one time in the past as an economic zone down there. You
A
remember
liquor
that?
store?
Sorry?
Maybe it's a liquor store. We have a Harrigan's every 50 feet or something like that.
You know, I don't have any objection to this question, but I would like to just say, except gas stations.
Gas stations are going away, I guess, and they're gonna become electric outlets.
Oh, well, Hamilton has more gas stations per capita probably than any town on Patrick's list. I don't-
It might be a little hard for people reading this the first time to understand what actually is being asked there, because, but it's a hard thing to describe, actually. Again, I think we could, if there's a better way to word this, we could work on that a little bit, but that was.
Yeah, I
the
think we should
intent,
clarify.
Coming up with note. I don't see Hamilton doing that, really.
I don't either.
And it's not that I'm trying to encourage it, I just wonder if other people have that idea as a way to increase economic development here without building too much in one location.
To your point, and I think it's a very smart growth-oriented mindset.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the perfect world, what you want to do is you want to have a small convenience node within walkable
Mhm.
5 minutes from wherever someone lives.
Mhm.
So you don't have to get into your car. You can go get a drink, you can go get a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, that sort of thing, and then walk home. And that's, you know, one of the approaches a lot of communities take. I think that we may be a little bit more rural
Yeah,
than what that would, you know, be able to accommodate in a fabric like we have.
yeah, because the one hesitation I have is the Route 1A, Bay Road does not want a series of strip malls
Yeah.
going down. That's just, is off the table. That's not what I was proposing here, but I just thought
Yeah.
there were maybe some corners within town. Gordon Conwell would be one site, for example, where you could have a mixed-use development happening there. So that would be the idea. And it's, again, the basic building block is the neighborhood, and that's where it would occur in particular areas that are amenable to this type of development on a small scale.
Would it be possible to point out an example of what you had in mind so people could understand the question better? I mean, I was thinking encourage small business development, but again, if you're thinking Gordon Conwell, maybe not small business, but for example, or just in parentheses, e.g.,
Mhm.
I don't know if that, if you could come up with something that would
That
assist
people would know. People would
to
know.
understand that, yes, it's not a strip mall.
And
It might be a little takeout shop or a little
and
establishment, you know, breakfast place or something.
I was hoping that this, and my apologies because I offered to be a part of this committee and then my life fell apart and I couldn't. But I was sort of hoping this second survey would incorporate in some way, and I think Marnie, you're getting to this a little bit, what we're learning about the existing conditions research. And so being as specific as we possibly can, where maybe there's an example so people understand the question. But then also, and I haven't gotten a chance to review this yet, so my apologies. You know, something like Hamilton only has X number of acres that are, you know, not protected in perpetuity and are developable. What would you do with that land and have, you know, like residential housing, commercial development, like people could, you know, X where they, just so it's more, we're sort of doing two things. We're educating the town, which is what we've talked about a lot during this process, wanting people to understand what's possible and what's not. And then also being as specific as possible. So I don't know if that was a thought in this second sort of iteration of the survey, but I like the example so that there's no confusion about what the question is asking. And then is there a way to be more, to use more of that existing conditions information that we've now learned from Weston and Sampson?
Well,
And
I
maybe
think
not.
the
Maybe
other-
that's not appropriate for a survey. I don't know.
The other example would be the pizza sandwich place up in Asbury Street.
And that's exactly what I was thinking.
Those
but that's
kind of
grandfathered
things,
in.
yeah. But I'm not sure how much scope, obviously, Gordon Conwell is a very good example, because you're gonna have you will have a concentration with those dormitories there when whatever happens comes out. But I don't see as much scope otherwise, but that's just me.
Jack,
Anyway.
I think you make a very good point. For example, a small convenience store or a small takeout restaurant. You could even say, the Five Sons, because I think that's a good representation of what I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe what would be a little node in a residential neighborhood, and so that people don't freak out and think we're talking about some ginormous building that's going to have 15 offices in it or something, but something that's very usable and very user friendly for the neighborhood. I think that's a great idea.
And maybe this ties in with your form design thing, that there could be, where if within that there are population concentrations,
Yeah.
that opportunity could be perhaps noted or something.
This community, I thought there's a potential there because of its agricultural background and so forth. I mean, it could be a farm-to-table kind of restaurant that happens somewhere.
Well, the stable at Patton Homestead should be a bistro, a nice farm-to-table bistro, but
Well,
that idea went by the board some time back.
yeah, or a farm stand, like, there's one, I guess, down in north, up, a little further up on Asbury.
Yeah, the old green,
Yeah.
Meadows Farm, yeah.
anyway, green tables, whatever, green.
Ox Farm. It's called Ox
Okay.
Farm now.
Well, let's roll on, and maybe we might consider doing a little rewording on that and say, whatever.
Okay.
Hamilton should,
How
sorry.
was this distributed? I don't think I ever saw this. Did it come from email?
No, it came from Rosie.
Oh, I
From
just,
Patrick. Patrick, you sent it around.
Patrick.
Sent it
Patrick.
Yeah,
Patrick sent it out.
Patrick sent it.
all right, I just need to find it. Sorry, I just hadn't seen it. But
Date is the 10th, July 10th.
Okay, and it's hard to read on the screen, Carolyn. Can you figure if you got it, or?
I don't have an email from Patrick on
better?
the 10th.
Oh, here, this is getting bigger. Can you read this now?
I can see. I just wanted to be able to.
It was sent to Corey.
Oh, yeah. Corey has the dot.
Oh.
I'm the dot. Corey's no dot.
Right.
Perfect. I'll have
that's
Corey
what
forward it to
happened.
me. Thank you.
Okay,
sorry for the dot.
That's okay. It happens every day.
page 4, number 4 in the top. Hamilton should encourage senior housing and/or affordable housing.
Yeah.
That, that brings up a question in my mind always, how? Are we talking subsidies? Are we talking the form-based layout of the town? I mean, if we did that, I think if we did that within the form-based guides that the planning board is contemplating, that kind of encouragement, I think would make sense, but it's such an open question, I have a little trouble with it the way it is.
Given it's almost 8:30, is this another example where we could review offline and send?
Seen it before, it's not a good time. to-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to,
All right. I was going to use those last 5 minutes to tense
Just for,
concentration.
Track changes. That's going to be our new theme.
just,
Okay,
Jack,
we'll put it off to the next.
yeah, pardon me, just very quickly, Emil, could you try to reword the looking ahead
Yeah.
instead of the word implement? That's pretty generic. How would they implement the changes? We're talking about,
You're talking about table contents?
no, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the survey at the end, looking ahead.
Oh. This
The
was,
essay questions.
How would you implement? Instead of,
Oh,
if it could be sharpened a bit in terms of
Marnie, did you
tax or
write that?
I think you're just trying to harvest
Good idea.
Yeah.
everybody's hopes and fears, isn't it, or something like that, or what's the intent there, I guess?
well,
Well, this is where you get,
probably economic,
it's the economic development, the economic aspect.
right, so tax or divert from current expenditures or, I'm just asking that it be sharpened a bit.
Put an EG on it, an
Okay.
example.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That could work.
Yes.
Examples,
I love EGs.
increased taxes, yeah.
Okay, sorry, David, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, it's all right.
Anybody else have any other general comments of that nature? All right,
Thank you to everyone who worked on this new version.
yeah.
Yes.
And my apologies for ditching you all.
All right, so we'll finish off. I've got another little bit I wanted to discuss there. So the next meeting is the 28th, is it?
And I'll be away with
Yes.
apologies.
I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Yeah, the 28th would be the
28th.
day.
6:30.
Yep.
All right. And key agenda items for the next meeting are those three, the three, or four, was it 3 or 4? Which I,
Well, I think we,
We're gonna
No
hold them all,
chapters.
no chapters.
Okay.
Until August 25th.
We'll just have the public shaming at the 28th.
okay, good. Okay, key agenda items for the next meeting. We've got done homework.
I will send the survey summary from the middle schoolers. I don't know if that will need to be an agenda item or not, but I will send it out and then the powers that be can decide whether or not that should be an agenda
I
item.
think it's a good thing to discuss.
I have no my husband hasn't really gotten a chance to look at it, so we're just not really sure how useful, how relevant, etc. it will be. So
All feedback
Yeah.
is a gift, Kristen.
it's
Perhaps
coming your
we
way.
could, Finalize the survey on
Yeah.
July 28th.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So if
Yeah.
everybody gets their comments to Emil within the next several days,
Yeah,
then
be prepared.
Patrick could get the revised survey out on Monday, or Tuesday, rather.
Okay, so Emil will get him to you,
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
focusing.
that's okay.
and CC Patrick.
So you made a note of my comment.
Yes, I did.
I don't have to send it to you.
No, you don't. I got it.
Thank you.
I got it.
Okay, are we at that point to entertain a motion?
Yes, I move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Jim, anybody?
not me.
All right, we'll do the vote. Marnie?
Marty Crouch, aye?
Abel Dahlquist, aye.
Dave Wanger, aye.
Jack Lawrence, aye.
Kristen Piper, aye.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye.
Lauren?
Lauren Lynch, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jim doesn't get to vote. Okay, thank you all for coming. Jim, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Be well.
Thank you all.
Patrick, thank
Thank you.
you.
Welcome.
Have a great night.